Unoppressed with Rayesa Gheewala and myself, Kathryn Jones. And today's topic is the curse of perfectionism. so, the topic is how we get stuck, feeling ashamed, and how this affects life. But what we want to leave you with is a sense of hope that it doesn't have to be that way. So, to kick it off, Risa, do you want to share what you notice as being the symptoms of perfectionism?
Yeah. Wow. Because I understand this and I observed it in myself, I can see it in others, in adults and in children. And with adults, they're very critical and judgmental of others. And underneath that, there's a layer of them being very critical and judgmental of themselves as well. And it leads to like black and white thinking. Either it's everything is 100% right or 100% wrong, or it's one person has to be right, one person has to be wrong. It's hard to see life flowing, ebbing and flowing. So we get really stuck in ways of thinking, like I said, black and white. And you can't appreciate effort at all because the result or the outcome has to be perfect. Otherwise, it's not even worth trying, or it's kind of like why bother type of attitude. And I see this, in across many different areas of our life, whether it's in the practice of our faith. Like you have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, Allah won't be happy with me. In your profession, in your appearance. And it's a harsh way to live because then you get stuck. You really feel stuck, and it's just a lot of misery again. And with kids, I see a lot of more frustration with kids, and in my own family as well. It's like, but they combust even more. So in the frustration of why couldn't I do it? Why couldn't I do it? Why couldn't I get it this way? Or there's mistakes being made. They don't know how to allow for mistakes and not take it personally. And so that's really rough. It's really rough because I remember being in that place too, that I associated all of my behaviors with my worthiness. And if they weren't exactly how I needed to show up according to everyone's expectations, then something was wrong with me. And it kept me procrastinating, kept me hiding, it kept me playing small and not really allowing me to reach my potential. I gave up a lot.
Mm. It's interesting because I think the pattern of perfectionism goes hand in hand with the concept of not feeling good enough, like their
Yes,
partners in crime.
absolutely.
And I think I spent most of my childhood trying to, uh, excel in everything results wise. It's not necessarily effort wise, results wise, in order to prove that I was good enough. And I
Yeah.
see this pattern um, probably more than anything I experienced myself in one of my children who has had a shocking year at school this year because nothing seemed good enough. And so it was less shameful to her to not hand things up and find out that they weren't good enough, than to hand it up and not, get the result that she wanted. And so she chose zero over any sort of grade. And that
Mm.
was a very destructive um, outcome. And that's what, when we were talking about the curse of perfectionism, that's the curse of it, is that it becomes, as you said, black and white, all or nothing. It becomes easier to go, well, I didn't fail because I just didn't hand it in.
Doesn't always work that way in real life, though, right?
Yeah. And if you apply that across life, can you imagine the opportunities missed throughout life running that theme of perfectionism or not being good enough? And it's actually reminded me just now of one of Sydney Banks's sayings, where if the world just stopped fearing its own experience, what a different world. If everyone could just stop fearing their own experience, what a different world we would have. If you think about it, what is holding it back? What is making somebody not hand in their work? It's the fear of the feeling they're going to have if it's not up to the standard that they had hoped or expected. So they're fearing the feeling that they're going to have. And that's it. And that's the shame feeling, the ashamed feeling that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this in my daughter as well. And what you're talking about when you mentioned that you had to excel in everything in terms of your marks and your grades, they had to be like excellent, right? And there's a difference between, SN, excellence, because that's about your effort. That's not about the actual result. Whereas excellent, like perfect grades or marks, as you guys call it, is is a little bit different because, like for my daughter, it's like if things don't like there was a lot of emphasis put on her and the messages that she got in her childhood about how things look. Like for example, she loves to bake, so when she bakes, the end product has to be flawless. And so there's so much anxiety and pressure every step she takes. So if there's a mistake, like with the frosting having too many air bubbles, or it's not like the right consistency, she's so hard on herself. And if it feels like she can't come back from it, like it builds and builds and builds, she literally throws the baby out with the bathwater. So, as she's getting older, it's helping her to kind of slow down and, once she's out of it, process the thinking that goes with what she's feeling, and then therefore the action that reflects the feeling and the thinking. And that's very hopeful, actually, because when we realize that, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be this big buildup of anxiety, pressure, and then explosion because I'm so frustrated I burst. And then it also feels like you're right about the shame, and it feels like you go through all of this effort and it's dismissed. You dismiss it and you feel like other people dismiss it too, because we do live in a world where people just look at the final results, right? So how do we, I think Amal had said that it becomes a habit, like it just becomes a perpetual habit that you keep thinking that way, rather than understanding, wait a minute, how am I gauging myself? How am I judging myself? How does Allah judge me? Right? And when we go back to that, we can use that as a marker to judge myself. How do I know how to judge myself? Well, how does Allah judge me? Right? He looks at our intention and he looks at our effort. So he doesn't look at like what the outcome is or the final result, because we don't have control over that always, because there's lots of external circumstances that we don't have control over, right? So I found that like that was a way, that helped me, and slowly bit by bit, I'm supporting my daughter in being able to see that. And so she keeps trying, but and she does really well. But then it's almost like when a mistake happens, it's getting better each time in how she handles it. So I think that, when people could see that no matter how old you are, that it doesn't always have to be like this. That's very hopeful, I think.
So listening to you, one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, we were born on the Fitrah, and we were born doing massive imperfect action. You look at the whole attempt of of walking, for instance. How many times growing up did we stand up, fall down, until we got the hang of standing up? And then how many times we fall down until we got the hang of walking? And how many times did we trip over when we started to learn to run, right? So we grew up not seeking perfectionism, but seeking growth. And so along
That's
the
our
way,
natural state, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that's our natural state. So along the way, that natural state has been corrupted by our environment, which we know that's how it all works. And what I see is that this concept of perfectionism, as it is linked with not being good enough, stems from experiences we've had in our childhood, where we've collected the perception as a child that we weren't good enough, and then collected data continuously to make that become a belief. And it's really interesting having a conversation with my daughter this week, when we were discussing this, and I was trying to get her to see a connection between things that happened at home versus how she approached schooling this last year. And she said to me, yeah, well, a certain person used to say, if you don't do it properly, don't do it at all. So she literally took that literally. And so as adults, we've got to be careful what we're saying to kids, because kids' minds are quite literal. You see, as the adult saying that wasn't meaning don't do it. The adult was meaning do it well, right? If you're going to do it well. It's what
And the difference between ahsan and excellent, like perfect. Ahsan and perfect, there's a difference between those two, excellence
right.
and perfection.
So in a way, the person was talking about ihsan, right? But the way the child interpreted it, because ihsan, of course, is quite a abstract concept that they intuitively know but intellectually don't understand until later in life. And so when we use words like this, they get misinterpreted and they get understood by a young child in a particular way. And the other thing I noticed was, it wasn't like she was told off for not getting it done well. It was more that when she came to present what she did, what she was told was, oh, you could do this better or that better. Like, it was meant in a teaching and encouraging way, but it was experienced as, no matter what I do, there's always something I have to improve. So there's two
Yeah.
lessons from this. One is in self-reflection of, well, that's possibly where it's all come from, but not needing to go back there and, you know, be a wounded soldier that needs fixing, just to acknowledge that that's just where it came from, and that underneath innately we are still able to show up with ihsan and not need to be perfect. But also so that as adults we can be mindful how we communicate with children, because we don't necessarily think how our words may be coming across to them.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking sometimes adults don't realize how harsh they're on themselves. So how they communicate natural, like I don't want to say it's natural, but how they normally communicate comes out harshly as well, because that's how they're accustomed to their inner dialogue, talking to themselves that way, right? So that perfectionism is the expectation that they have from their children. And so, in terms of how things look to people is the gauge of whether I did this, whether I did my best or not. The differentiation of whether I did my best in comparison to perfectionism gets tied in and mixed up together. I think that, and also it ends up being like, you know how you mentioned that perfectionism is very much tied into not feeling good enough or not. I feel like I'm not enough. Is also because it's connected to, like, we connect it to our worth, and we feel disconnected to Allah in that moment as well. Because the thing is that, like, if we remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us our worth, and that's not dependent on, how good we do something or not. It's dependent on, it's not dependent on anything. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges us with intention. Our intention, was our intention sincere to please Him? And our intention of why we're doing something. Because a lot of times I think people get stuck in, what are people going to think of me, when they're doing something that, if they don't feel like they can meet other people's expectations, or they feel like they're going to be judged, they just run away. Like, for example, and I think I've seen how this affects people in their relationship with Allah. Because if they feel they always have to be perfect, and they're not showing up in their deen perfectly, they're making mistakes, or they're missing the mark, so to speak, they feel hopeless. That, like, why bother? If Allah's going to be disappointed in me, then why bother? And it actually hurts them, because it hardens you. It makes you feel bitter and resentful, and it totally takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I've seen this in adults, in my family, and in my surroundings. And it's really sad, because it's just, they're stuck in that pattern of thinking.
And it really all does boil down to thinking, because when the thinking shifts, the whole pattern of perfectionism can fall away. So key things that we learn in our deen that give us a different perspective is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us to be perfect, that He is the only one that is perfect. And that if we did as a creation become perfect, it is said that He would replace us with another creation, because He loves for us to repent. He's not judging us based on us making mistakes. The judgment is on how quickly we turn back to Him after we make the mistakes, because it's inevitable that we make mistakes. And the other thing I think that reframes the whole situation is understanding that the concept of failure, which is what the fear is, the fear of failure, isn't it? The perfectionism is the fear of failure, the fear of looking silly, feeling ashamed. Is I think it was described beautifully in Sydney Banks' second book, The Second Chance, where he said that failure, it words to the effect that failure is, sorry about the beeping, I should have turned notifications off. Failure is what we define it as. So if we see something not working out the way we planned it to work out, as well, it was the qadr of Allah that it was to work out that way, then we don't see it as failure. Or if we see it not working out the way we planned it to work out as a lesson, where it's something we needed to learn or experience to grow, or to see something we needed to see to be a better person, we don't see it as failure. So we are, in fact, creating our own sense of failure by defining the outcome as failure, when in fact the outcome could be many other things. And so it boils down to we're experiencing our own thought. The outcome is defined as failure only by us. I mean, others might define it as failure, but they're separate realities. And so we don't, what matters is if we define it as failure.
Yeah.
If we define it as not good enough, if we define it as it should have been better.
Should have been, could have been, should have been this, should have been that. It's that whole your personal plan versus Allah's plan. Like, what are you more attached to? What are you going according to? I find that, on top of everything that you said, how we define an outcome, whether a failure or success. And it reminds me of the hadith of there may be something that you don't like that's good for you, or like I think it goes strange as a matter of a believer. If something happens that he doesn't like, then he's patient. If something happens that he does like, then he's grateful. So from according to the hadith, like, it's all okay. It's just like you said, your perception of how you're interpreting it, how you're seeing it, and then how you're relating it to yourself. Like, okay, if this event or this circumstance or this, the marks that I got didn't go according to what I thought I should get, or I was hoping I would get, does it mean something about me, bad about me, that, or I got a failure on my marks? But does it mean that I'm a failure? Like, there's a difference between seeing something as not going according to plan versus something's wrong with me. Like, taking it personally.
Yeah, so Mal here has said failure is just a feedback. I would actually take it a step further and go, it isn't failure, it is just feedback. Like, take the it's just feedback. If we
feedback.
If we just take the word failure out of it and just go, it's just feedback.
Yeah, because we're living in the feelings of our thinking every moment.
So I had a recent experience where I can so I've been studying at uni, and I've just completed my degree in Islamic pedagogy, alhamdulillah. And this last semester was a difficult semester in that right in the middle, when we're meant to be doing the research for our action research project, my dad died, and then 2 weeks later I broke my arm. And so for about 5 weeks accumulatively, I was pretty much out of action. So for 2 weeks after Dad died, my brain just couldn't think. And for about 3 weeks after breaking my arm, I realized how much pain makes it hard to think. And so trying to do research and an assignment, it's a 10-week semester, and 5 weeks of it was gone. So I basically wrote to my lecturer and said, I don't think I can do it. But then I found out that they weren't going to do that subject again till the end of next year. And so it would be another whole 12 months before I'd graduate. And I thought, oh, that's a long time. And so my lecturer said, let's see what we can do. So they gave me a really long extension they actually let me tell them what I thought I could do. So I gave them what I thought was the middle ground between what I would want and what I thought they would want. I sort of picked somewhere in the middle and pitched that. So when it came to, there was 2 major assignments I had to hand in, both of which I finished at about 1 in the morning when they were due at midnight. And so 1 or 2 in the morning, I handed them in, both of which I didn't have the chance to proofread them. All I managed to do by that time was actually finish it and hand it in. And the last assignment, I didn't even do it because it was one of the assignments was an essay. I didn't even actually do the essay in order. I kind of did this section and then I did that section and then I came back here and did. So I didn't even know if it flowed because I'd popped bits of sections together and went, okay, all the bits are there now. Because there were certain bits that I couldn't get my brain around. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get stuck. I'm just going to move on to the next bit. And then I got unstuck and I did that bit, slotted it in. The point of all of that is that I had, for all my assignments in my previous 2 subjects, high distinctions because I'd been in my wisdom, in my flow, and I'd done it exactly the way I wanted to do it. And this wasn't in flow. This was forced out of me. It was not my natural state. And I really wasn't excited about what I was handing in, but the choice was to hand it in and complete my degree, or to not hand it in and wait another year to do the rest of my degree. And I thought, no, It's just get it done, do it. So I got credits.
Massive imperfect action.
That's right. I got credits for them. So it wasn't even just a pass. I got a credit. So it wasn't high distinctions like the other subjects. It was credits. And I looked, well, alhamdulillah, it wasn't even just a pass. It was a credit. It was fine. And at the end of the day, I didn't do it for the grades. I did it for the learning, which I still got out of it. And that learning is actually flowing through the work we're doing with schools in so many different ways. It's absolutely amazing. And out of that assignment, whole new ways of marketing our schools program has come out of it. So there's so many beautiful, amazing things have come out of pushing through. Then had I just gone, no, I'm not going to get high distinction. So that's it. Can it? I'll do it next year.
Yeah. I'm sure it's been quite a journey for you to go from what you just described right now, kind of flowing into being at ease with however way you submit it, because the goal was to do something, right? Take action, versus all this thinking and stress and pressure, like, oh my God, it's not how I wanted it to be. This is so frustrating. I can't do it, and just give up. Or, either we give up or we do things to procrastinate or binge eat or whatever, like to get that pressure and those feelings away, to feel better, right? So I'm sure you've gone on that journey, so you're in a different place now. But I think this is hopeful too, because like you said, when the stories fall away of what this means about you, about how you have to do it or how things have to go, even when things don't go your way, you can still navigate it with ease. It's not a problem. Like, it didn't go the way you expected or wanted to, but it's okay. It's not a problem.
But there was so much came out of it.
I'm sure.
And that is
And you can see that because you weren't stuck. Now you can see how beneficial and what came out of it. But if you're stuck in there, you won't even be able to get to that point.
Exactly. And so I think that's probably the point we want to leave people with. I didn't have to specifically go back to my past and heal mother wounds, father wounds, whatever, wounded soldier baby
these things came from. Yeah.
the child, or do anything like that to shift that. And I know I said that in a pretty derogatory way, but because I don't like that language, because it leads to blame on people of your past that they didn't do good enough by you. And it leads to, and I've been through it when I was originally doing emotional therapy as a means of healing, spending a lot of time feeling angry with your parents or angry with people who you felt did wrong by you, to move through all the feelings and everything. In order for me to come out of that not feeling good enough to feeling good enough to hand up to my lecturer something that I know wasn't complete, but was not a bad effort, obviously, because it got a credit. That didn't come from specifically trying to fix my perfectionism or my not feeling good enough. It came through this journey of learning of how our experience works. And as that happened, things just falling off, all the stories falling away, until I came back to my innate state of confidence that we were all born with, that Fitrah state of knowing that it's okay to keep making the same mistake till we get it right. That we,
like a child does, because they're closer to their Fitrah than we are. It's been less time for them to be corrupted. Yeah.
As I've heard said, fail our way to success, which is essentially what life is about. So if you're not going to take the journey of failing your way to success, well, you're not going to reach success.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be multiple failures before you get there. Do you think that Back to the Fitrah got here because it just was a success? The failures. I mean, the failures.
any successful thing that you see or witness has a history and a journey of people trying and failing and trying and failing and not giving up, so they get to that point of success. It's the not giving up out of frustration, or like it's too difficult, it's too hard, it's not going my way. So I think one of the other things listening to you is this. I think I talked earlier about harshness and criticism and judgment on the self. And really, we need to come back to that compassionate space, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most compassionate. And that's where we get permission to give ourselves compassion. So that's the only way forward. Because it allows you to be human, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us perfectly imperfect. So when we can embrace that and accept that, because a lot of us struggle with accepting our humanity. It really does, going back to that space of self-compassion, embracing and accepting our humanity, that we were designed imperfect, impatient, humans. And that's our natural design. It's okay. We can grow with that. We can still work with that.
And it really brings another angle to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, glad tidings to those who are the patient and the perseverant, because it really is about persevering. This life is about persevering.
Absolutely.
So the good news is, anyone who's listening who is stuck in that perfectionism rut, is that it's not a lifetime sentence. It is a temporary state that you have found yourself in, and you can come back to your Fitrah state of ihsan rather than perfectionism. Inshallah. Anytime. It's just one thought away. Just one thought away. Well, we were trying to keep it under a half an hour, and I've had to put my glasses on so I can actually read the screen now. It's 32 minutes. So we'll just do a quick look through the comments here. We've had quite a few people listening to us, and apparently got 16 people listening to us right now, which is absolutely wonderful. And we've had Amal and Shams and some people who come through as Facebook user all here with us saying salam, so wa alaikum assalam. And
we'd love to hear your takeaways if you want to share them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyone who's listening, whatever platform you're listening on, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else, LinkedIn, do type a takeaway of what you took away from this. So it looks to me most of the comments are just sort of commenting along with what we were saying at the time. So it sounds like everyone's been very engaged, which is wonderful.
There's a comment here that says, that is nothing new. Failing your way to success has been a long lifetime thing. Just ask our elders. Yes, it's been like this since the beginning of time. That's how life works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. The point you made that our trials are temporary. Yeah. Well, even the trial of perfectionism is temporary. It's when we believe that we are a perfectionist, then we hang on to that belief, then we can hold ourselves back in that. Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's like when you think and you believe that and you think you have to be that, you're going against your innate nature. You're going against being human, because that's not what it means to be human.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Well, I think we might end it here. Thank you, everyone, Jazakallah khair, for being with us. And if you're listening to the recording, still also share with us a takeaway. We would love to have the takeaway still pour in and hear what people got out of this conversation. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free all of those perfectionists out there from their perfectionism, which is just a story that they've collected from childhood, that at any time we can change our story. And that's what this is all about, of the work that we do, isn't it, Rayesa? The stories can change any time.
The stories can change. The perception can change at any time. That's the beauty of being human and understanding how our human experience works, that, like you said, it's one thought away. And this Facebook user, it says, "Don't worry, you're not late. This is recorded. You can hear this again and leave a comment, and inshallah, it'll be beneficial for you."
Inshallah. All right.
Yeah.
On that note, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Salam, the barakatuhu.